What's up, y'all? My name is OhDough, and today I'm trying to show you guys how to kill Heroic Koshai in under 3 minutes for the Mastery, which I believe you can kill just regular Koshai, but I went with Heroic Koshai because that means that this build will do even better on a normal Koshai. Anyway, the first weapon I chose to use was the axe, and I'll be honest, the axe is not my favorite weapon on Koshai, like at all, because it's just a slow weapon in general, and you need a pretty decent chunk of attack speed to make it effective on the boss in most cases. Now, on this fight, I forgot to put in Evasive Fury, which is really easy to do in this build, and instead I only had Conduit for attack speed, which is still a decent amount of attack speed, but I want to have two sources of attack speed, either Emerald Lantern and Conduit or Evasive Fury and Conduit. Either one works, but I was not that smart. Anyway, the build I chose for this fight, which is a build I used on pretty much all the fights for Koshai except for when I played repeaters, is as follows. I had a Hellion weapon, which in this case is the axe, with the special of Flight of Ruin and the mod Volatile Axe Core. For my gear, I had a Hellion helmet, Koshai chest piece, Reza gloves, Koshai feet, and a Jurassic lantern. And having this gear let me get 6+6 perks, I like saying that kind of, and they are as follows. Aethic Attunement, Conduit, Cunning, Overpower, Predator, and Rage Hunter. And these perks are insanely good. Now for the axe, the thing I would swap is the Cunning. I would just take those two technique slots and swap them out for some Evasive Fury instead of Cunning, just to have a bit more attack speed to make the fight better. But the fight in general is, if you're playing this exact build, you just go for one charge swings whenever you can on the axe. Go for one charge swings, get your Q off whenever you can to get some more determination stacks to do more damage, and that's all you do. Now normally I would try and get an interrupt on Koshai, which to do that with the axe, all you do is jump and left click. That's the best way to do it. It's really quick, just gotta time it pretty well. But Koshai never tried to leap at me, which is kind of a bummer because it's kind of fun to interrupt that with a jump attack. It looks kind of cool, it feels kind of good. But regardless, I got a 245 on this fight. The next weapon I chose were the Chainblades, which are a ton of fun on Koshai because Koshai is a fast behemoth and the Chainblades are a fast weapon. Now, the build I used was pretty much the exact same build as for the axe. The only thing I changed were the Chainblades. You just swap out the Hellion axe for the Hellion Chainblades, and then Bob's your auntie, you got a good build. Now for the mods of my Chainblades, I had the Cruel Rift Strike. It's my favorite special. I like it a ton more than the previous special, which is the backflip slash chain pull. Not a fan of that whatsoever, but Cruel Rift Strike is sick. And for the mod, I had Serrated Blades, which the way you proc Serrated Blades is doing your left clicks. They will give you a chance to proc a Serrated Blades. I keep saying it, a Serrated Blades, and when you get that proc, all you have to do is left R, which is your swinging blades attack, and the whole attack will be a critical strike when you do that. The whole swinging motion, and it's kind of nuts. So the whole fight with Chainblades boils down to basically getting off your Serrated Blade procs and doing the Swinging Blades attack. And the other thing I want to mention is the way I'm dodging Koshai is when it does its little swipe attacks, I dodge backwards and then Q forwards to dodge the attack and then get a critical strike with my Cruel Rift Strike. So I want to suggest y'all to do that. It's a very, very fun way and a very effective way of getting in some damage when you want some extra damage to happen. And aside from that, bring interrupt grenades if I was you, is what I would do, because you can interrupt Koshai whenever it leaps at you, which when it backs up, most of the time it wants to leap at you, so just be ready for that. And that is pretty much the fight, just getting your Serrated Blade procs. I keep saying bread. Alrighty, the next weapon is the sword, which again, just swap out the Chainblades with the sword and you're good. It's the same build. For the special, I have the Valiant Overdrive because of the mobility of the overdrive. Like when you have it active, you can Q dash, and the damage is also pretty good. My mod is Reactive Hilt, which by the way the wording is a bit confusing, but what the wording means is on a roll attack. So if you roll an instant attack, it's a critical strike no matter what. And the same works for your Q dash during overdrive. If you Q during the overdrive state and you dash and you attack right after doing that, it's a critical strike, which is huge. Also, the interrupt I just did is nuts. It's a pretty good interrupt. I'm proud of that. Very, very fun. Now, for the fight, all you have to do is spam left click, and then a double right click whenever you can. It's a ton of damage. It's the best sword combo. It does the most damage currently. It is wild. It does just a ton of damage. Like, I think I was fighting Koshai before using just right clicks, and it was not fast at all. But this is pretty fast. So this is Warpike on Koshai, and I'm gonna say real quick, it was not a good time. It took me so many hunts to make this a sub 3. It was ridiculous. I tried a couple different builds, but the one build that actually worked was pretty much the exact same build I've been using, except I swapped out Cunning for Savagery. So same build, I just swapped out Cunning for Savagery, and it was much better. And I was also using a different special. I was using the Savage Wellspring in a lot of the builds I was using before, which is helpful, kind of, for the crit chance, but it is not helpful because you can't interrupt it easily unless you want to take damage consistently. So instead, I swapped that out for the Concussive Payload, which is the missile, and I just would interrupt Koshai whenever I could, and I would actually trigger interrupts, or trigger interrupt phases more often than I would normally choose to, because if you walk away from Koshai, then sometimes it'll leap at you instead of doing anything else, and I wanted to trigger that as much as possible. So I would just walk backwards, start charging a missile, hope it jumps at me, interrupt it, and then get a huge window for overpower. Now for my mod, I have the Balanced Spearhead, which all you do to make this work is you left click and then right click, alternate that. At the end of that combo, just do a left hold or do a right click, and you'll get up to 15% extra damage for the end combo, which is just bonus damage, and it's really helpful. And aside from that, I was using a wound potion just to make the wounds faster, because the Warpike is in a rough spot in terms of solo damage. Like, it's pretty good in a group, it has a really awesome buff in a group, but in terms of solo play, it's rough. It's rough times, man. Like, you need a bit of extra help, which a wound pot isn't extra damage per se, it just helps me wound faster. The repeaters are up next, and I want you to notice that the build changed a ton. The only thing that stayed the same was the Koshai chest, but the helmet is now Reza, gloves are Hellion, and the feet are Karabak. And that's because the repeaters do not have the same slots as Hellion weapons, not even close, and you don't have stats on the weapons themselves either. So to make this build work, I wanted to have a pretty decent amount of damage, and to get that damage I had to do what I did. Now my perks are Conduit, Molten, Overpower, and Predator at +6. And my customization of repeaters are the Blaze Barrel because Koshai is weak to fire, Salvo Chamber, Captain's Grip, Searing Prism, and the Lucky Magazine, which I recommend for pretty much every loadout when it comes to the mod. Lucky Magazine is insanely good, and honestly I view it as the best mod because it gives you up to 24% crit chance at no bullets remaining in your clip, which the upside of that is if you have no bullets and you do a right click, which is your Salvo Chamber, that has a really high chance to crit. It's 24% chance for each bullet, so it's really nutty. And oh, I want to mention that I'm using Molten here because the first attack I interrupt on Koshai, I can't really dodge, and I want to interrupt it to get overpower, so I have Molten because I want to get that attack speed in during that window, which Molten is procced by attacking a Behemoth every X amount of seconds to proc the Molten Hearts, pick them up, and you get 20% attack speed for 8.5 seconds, which stacks. Having +5 to +6 gives you full duration. We are fine to the last weapon, which is the hammer, and for the build, just use any of the previous builds, so such as the chain blades, axe, sword. Just use those builds, but swap out the chain blade, axe, or sword for the hammer, Hellion Hammer, and it's the same build. Now for my special, I have the Mighty Landbreaker, which gives you 25% extra damage for 30 seconds using basic shells, or 40% extra damage using the Acer Charge shells, which is bonkers. I love the buff though, it's a really fun buff. And this fight was kind of among a S. I was trying to get Koshai to jump at me a lot more than it did so I could interrupt it, but it never wanted to. It kept just either doing the Kali Ma to the ground and not jumping at me, so it was making me look really dumb. And on top of that, my hammer bugged. The sound of my hammer is like the axe, and I hate that bug, but it was happening on a ton of hunts, so I decided, hey, it was a fast hunt time. I played like trash, but the hunt time is still really fast because hammer is not broken XD, so I decided to go with it. But that is pretty much the video, guys. If you like, leave a like. If you want to subscribe to Champions content, use my Epic Game Store code in the Epic Game Store and follow my Twitch. all I gotta say, guys. I'll catch you later. Peace.